Alright, so in this video, the goal is to completely tear down this quartz movement, and apparently it's a popular movement that's in a lot of these more classic antique watches. So here we go. So initially I'm removing I think they're called wrist pins, and now I'm going to use a tool to unscrew the back. And there you go, I'm just adjusting it, and I'm going to rotate it. And mind you, I picked up this watch at a thrift for a couple of bucks, and I'm trying to get into watches, and I figured the best way to learn is hands-on, right? And obviously you don't want to start off by having a Rolex be your first watch that you tear down. So baby steps, go to a local thrift, get a watch, and yeah, break it down. And this is going to be a teardown because, as you'll see, after we tear it down, I think I lost the confidence to put it back together, but that's why we're here. It's a learning curve, so as you can see, right now I'm trying to look and figure out how to remove the crown. And so on some of these watches, usually you have to press down somewhere, but first you have to put it in like second or third position, so that's what I'm trying to do. In some watches, it has to be in position 1 or 2 before you get engaged. So I'm just doing what a non-professional does and just try to push down on anything that looks pushable. And I think, yeah, finally right there around that area, it's gonna release the crown. But and mind you, if this was an expensive watch, clearly I'd be wearing gloves and have it being a watch movement holder. But as this watch is only a couple bucks and there's no sentimental value, and the only purpose it's going to serve is to be as an instructional guide for myself and possibly for some of you. So there we go. So we removed the movement from the case. I think next I'm going to try to remove the battery. And so I've never heard of this Hugoton team, but it's I think certain schools or organizations, they outsource their own dials, and then a company will ship it to them. So, but if I had to guesstimate, this watch is over a decade old, probably 10 plus years old. And it's probably in functional condition, but I didn't bother putting a new battery in before disassembly to confirm if it works. So I'm just using, I think it's called like a pin mover too, and then right there, see, if it was an expensive dial, you probably wouldn't use that wrist tool, removal tool, but since I didn't have the very thin things to put under, I just use the tool to remove it. Alright, so let's see what's going on next. So since this is the first watch I'm breaking down, it took me a while to find the proper flatheads. And it is true, if you're going to tear down a watch, you do want to have multiple sizes of flatheads. And it's funny, but yeah, from what I noticed, this watch didn't have a single Phillips screw. All of them were, sorry, let me mute my phone. All of them were flatheads. But I picked up an Amazon kit for 15 bucks, and it worked perfect. They worked perfect, rather. So here I am, and I guess in retrospect, I'm not sure if the order matters. I'm sure it does, as you'll see when we get later to the video. I think order of disassembly does matter, but as we're just learning hands-on, we're just removing screws at random. So I think the screw that I'm unscrewing right here and another one are the two that hold the face cover. So let's see what happens. And I'm doing this video at times to speed. Since unscrewing the screws it takes a minute too. Alright, so here we go. Another screw. Another day, another screw. And throughout, you'll notice me even right there, I got a smaller flathead. And in the Amazon link that I could throw down below, I think it had 5 different flathead sizes, and all of them are very small. And to a novice like me, I figured one would be fine, but you'd be wrong in thinking that when it comes to precision parts. You will need a variety of flathead screw sizes. So there we go. I popped that thing off. Hopefully, in later vids that I'll post, I'll be dabbling with finer watches, and but before then, I'm trying to refine my technique and overall watch acumen. But I do like mechanical watches. I think they're called automatic watch movements, but since those are more expensive, I don't want to break any of them or be unable to reassemble one. I figured, dabbling with the quartz movement just to get my feet wet would be a good way to go. And I recommend the same for you. Even if a watch isn't functional or working, if you could pick one up for a couple of bucks, I think it'd be a blast just tearing it in. And you'd be surprised because a lot of these parts, you're still getting a lot for the value. Granted, this one was a few bucks at a thrift shop, but there's a lot of parts. And later on, remember, if you do disassemble a watch, you could, I'm sure, if you stick within a certain brand or model, you could recycle a lot of the parts. So I wasn't too concerned. I did organize everything. I have a computer repair mat, and it's really cool because on the mat on the top row, they have little imprints, and it's labeled. So as you're removing things, you could put an order. Then my thinking was then to reassemble it, I could just go in reverse order. But usually if you are repairing a watch or disassembling, all the parts are suggested to be cleaned with an ultrasonic cleaner and special solution. As you'll see later in the video, there is some dirt that got trapped by the... Again, all my watch part names are still new, but on the very center heart, you'll see where there'll be trapped dirt. So let's see, what am I doing here? Yeah, so that has something to do with the where the crown gets pushed in. I think it's what keeps the crown locked, but also what switches it from position 1 to 2. So for instance, this is as the date feature. So when you're setting the time, you could put in position 2 to be able to set the date function, and that pulley right there, it would switch the movement to be able to mechanically rotate manually and mechanically be able to rotate the day dial. But and from some of the things I've read, it is interesting how even though automatic watches are the high value watches, a lot of these quartz watches, they're still complicated, and they hold time better than most, if not all, automatic watches can. But since automatic watches are a piece of art, you're paying for the artwork. Plus, with quartz, it keeps time perfect until right here you'll see me, one of the electrical features breaks. In which case, later down the road, it might be even harder to replace than parts of an automatic movement. So I think I finally removed enough, and I'm trying to pop the faceplate, if I'm not mistaken, that's the name of it. And yeah, everything came off pretty easy. I guess with anything repair related, as if you're putting too much force into it, you're doing something wrong. And I know there's a fad too where you could buy relatively cheap watches and just do custom dials or replace the face plates. I've seen some really funny and raunchy ones on eBay that probably should have bought, but someone pulled the trigger before I was able to. So here we go. So now I'm on the front cover. I think I'm removing the date feature right now. As you can tell, the screws are really small. So there we go. Comes straight off. And you can tell right there, like if I wasn't careful, it would almost be hard to notice. You see that thing that looks almost like a hair? That's actually part of the movement, so it's really easy to, and there we go, that thing flung off. And mind you, if this was an expensive watch, right, such as a Rolex, any one of those little screws or springs, once it shoots or springs somewhere, A, it could be almost impossible to find it, or B, it could get damaged, and C, ultimately you're gonna have to, it's time and money lost, and usually a lot of both. I forget what this is called, but that's the thing that the crown slides through, and as you can tell, this is why I think the order of removal was maybe slightly mixed up, because once I removed, a lot of the pieces fell off. So I think if I was to reassemble this movement, which I haven't yet, and am uncertain if I will, is it's gonna take, see right there, so the spring profile, and with watches it's a lot easier to remove pieces than it is to put them back together, but as with cars, you know, you'll have BMW, Mercedes dealerships, because it's, or a Honda, and whatever car you're used to working at, usually you're a specialist in that breaker model. And I'm pretty sure with watches, you have some of that too, because once you learn a movement, it's a lot easier to do the same movement over and over again, versus if, you know, especially if you're new in the hobby, if you're doing a different movement that you're unfamiliar with different brands, it might be a bit of a heartache and disheartening. But yeah, so this is it. My first quartz movement completely torn down. So hope you like it. And I'm sure I made a lot of issues, but there it is.